Four Little Engines by the Reverend W. Awdry. Read and adapted by Joshua Boston. Skarloey remembers. Sir Topham Hatt had sent Edward to the works to be mended. Near the workstation, Edward noticed a narrow-gauge engine standing in an open-sided shed. "That's Skarloey," he thought. "What's he doing there?" He remembered Skarloey and his brother Rheneas, because in the old days he had often brought passengers who wanted to travel up to the lake in their little train. As the men at the works could not mend him at once, Edward asked them to put him on a siding close to Skarloey. Skarloey was pleased to see Edward. "The owner has just bought 2 more engines," he said. "He told me I was a very old engine and deserved a good rest. He gave me this shed so I could see everything and not be lonely. But I am lonely all the same," he continued sadly. "I miss Rheneas very much. Yesterday, one of the new engines pushed him onto a flatbed, and now he's gone to be mended. I wish I could be mended too, and pull coaches again." "Have your coaches got names?" asked Edward. "Oh, yes. There's Agnes, Ruth, Jemima, Lucy, and Beatrice. Agnes is proud. She has cushions for first-class passengers. She pities Ruth, Jemima, and Lucy, who are third class with bare boards. But all 4 sniff at Beatrice. Beatrice often smells like fish and cheese, but she is most important," said Skarloey earnestly. "She has a little window through which the conductor sells tickets. I sometimes leave the others behind, but I always take Beatrice. You must have tickets and a conductor, you know." "Of course," said Edward gravely. "Rheneas and I," continued Skarloey, "used to take turns pulling the trains. We know everybody, and everybody knows us. We whistle to the people in the fields, at level crossings, and in lonely cottages and farms, and the people always wave to us. We love passing the school playgrounds at break time. Then the children would always run over to the fence to watch us go by. The passengers always wave back because they believe the children are waving to them. But we engines know better, of course," said Skarloey importantly. "Yes, we do indeed," agreed Edward. "We take your tourists to the lake and then get ready to pull the train back. We enjoy the morning journey home, because then our friends from the villages come down to do their shopping. We whistle before every station. 'Beep, beep, look out,' we call, and the people there are ready. 'Where's Mrs. Lass?' asks the conductor. 'She's coming. Beep, beep,' we whistle, and Mrs. Lass comes running onto the platform. 'We'll leave you behind one of these days,' laughs our driver, but we know he never will. We stop elsewhere, too, at farm crossings and stiles where paths lead to lonely houses. Rheneas and I know all the places very well indeed. And our driver used to say that we would stop even if he didn't put on the brakes. Sometimes on market day, Ruth, Jemima, and Lucy were so full of people that the conductor would allow third-class passengers to ride in Agnes. She didn't like that at all, and would grumble, 'First-class coach, third-class people.' That made me cross. 'Shut up,' I'd say, 'or I'll bump you.' That soon stopped her rudeness to my friends." Just then, some workmen came. "We're going to mend you now, Edward," they said. "Come along." "Goodbye, Skarloey," said Edward. "Thank you for telling me about your railway. It is a lovely little line." "It is indeed. Thank you for talking to me, Edward. You have certainly cheered me up. Goodbye." Skarloey watched Edward being taken to the works. Then, shutting his eyes, he dozed in the warm afternoon sun. He smiled as he dozed, for he was dreaming, as old engines will, of happy days in the past. Sir Handel. The two new engines looked very smart. One was called Sir Handel, who was originally painted blue, and the other, Peter Sam, originally painted green. Both had been painted in lovely bright red the day after they had arrived on the Skarloey Railway. "What a small shed," grumbled Sir Handel. "This won't do at all." "I think it's nice," said Peter Sam. "Pah!" grunted Sir Handel. "What's that rubbish nearby?" "Shh!" said Peter Sam earnestly. "That's Skarloey, the famous old engine." "I'm sorry, Skarloey," he whispered. "Sir Handel is upset now, but he's quite nice, really." Skarloey felt sorry for Peter Sam. "Now, Sir Handel," said the fireman next morning, "we'll get you ready." "I'm tired," he yawned. "Let Peter Sam go. He'd love it." "Nope," said the fireman. "Owner's orders. You're first." "Oh, well," said Sir Handel sulkily. "I suppose I must." Once his driver arrived, Sir Handel puffed away to fetch his coaches. He didn't like the look of them at all. "Whatever next?" he snorted. "Those aren't coaches, they're cattle cars." "Oh!" screamed the coaches. "What a horrid engine!" "It's not what I'm used to," clanked Sir Handel rebelliously, making for the station. He rolled to the platform just as Gordon arrived. "Hello," he said. "Who are you?" "I'm Gordon. Who are you?" "I'm Sir Handel." "Yes, I've heard of you. You're an express engine, I believe." "So am I, but I'm used to bogie coaches, not these cattle cars." "Do you have bogie coaches?" "Oh, yes, I see that you do." "We must have a chat sometime. Sorry I can't stop. I must keep time, you know." Gordon was speechless. Come along, puffed Sir Handel. "Cattle cars, grumbled the coaches. We'll pay him out. Presently, they stopped at a station. The line curved here and began to climb. It was not very steep, but the day was misty and the rails were slippery. "Hold back," whispered Agnes to the others. "Hold back," whispered the other coaches, and they giggled as Sir Handel started and the couplings tightened. Come on, he puffed as his wheels slipped on the greasy rails. Come on. His wheels were spinning, but the coaches pulled him back, and the train stopped on the hill beyond the station. I can't do it, he grumbled. I'm used to sensible bogie coaches, not these bumpy cattle cars. The conductor came up. I think the coaches are up to something, he told the driver. So they decided to bring the train down again to a level piece of line to give Sir Handel a good start. The conductor helped the fireman put sand on the rails, and Sir Handel made a tremendous effort. The coaches tried hard to drag him back, but he puffed and pulled so hard that they were sued over the top and away on their journey. The thin controller, Mr. Percival, who managed the Skarloey Railway, was severe with Sir Handel that night. You are a troublesome engine, he said. You are rude, conceited, and much too big for your wheels. Next time, I will punish you severely. Sir Handel was depressed and behaved well for several days. Then, one morning, he took the train to the top station. He was cross. It was Peter Sam's turn, but Mr. Percival had made him go instead. Sir Handel was hoping for a rest once they reached the station, but his driver thought otherwise. We will leave the coaches, he said, and fetch some cars from the quarry. Cars? snorted Sir Handel. Cars? Yes, his driver repeated. Cars. Sir Handel jerked forward. I won't, he muttered. So there! He lurched, bumped, and stopped. His driver and fireman got out. Told you, said Sir Handel triumphantly. He had pushed the rails apart and settled down between them. They telephoned Mr. Percival. He came up at once with Peter Sam and brought some workmen in a freight car. Then he and the fireman took Peter Sam home with the coaches, while the driver and workmen put Sir Handel back on the rails. "Eat my box," said Agnes crossly to Sir Handel as Peter Sam left. Sir Handel now felt very silly. Mr. Percival was cross too. His message was severe and blunt. "I will talk with you later." When Sir Handel crawled home that evening, Mr. Percival was waiting for him. "You are a very naughty engine," he said sternly. "You shall stay in the shed until I can trust you to behave." Peter Sam and the refreshment lady. As Sir Handel was shut up, Peter Sam had to run the line and was busier than ever. He now had to do Sir Handel's work as well as his own. He was excited, and the fireman found it hard to get him ready. "Sober up, can't you?" he growled. "Anyone would think that he wanted to work," said Sir Handel rudely, who was lonely and bored. "All respectable engines do," replied Skarloey firmly. "I wish I could work myself." "Keep calm, Peter Sam. Don't get too excited, and you'll do well." But Peter Sam was in such a state that he couldn't listen. When his driver came along, Peter Sam ran along to fetch the coaches. "Beep, beep, 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 beep. Come along, girls," he whistled, and even though he was excited, he remembered to be careful. "That's the way, my dears. Gently does it." "What did he say?" asked Jemima, who was deaf. "He said, 'Come along, girls,' and he called us his dears," simpered the other coaches. "Really, one does not know what to think. Such a handsome young engine, too. So nice and well-mannered." And they tittered happily together as they followed Peter Sam. But somehow the faster Peter Sam wanted to go, the slower the journey became. When he finally fussed into the station, Henry was already there. "This won't do, youngster," said Henry. "I can't be kept waiting. If you're late again tonight, I shall leave you and your passengers behind." "Pooh!" said Peter Sam. Secretly, he was a little worried, but not for long. He ran around his train and happily let off steam while he waited for the conductor to blow his whistle and wave his green flag. Peter Sam puffed away, singing a little song. "I'm Peter Sam, I'm running this line. I'm Peter Sam, I'm running this line. What fun it all is," he thought, as he journeyed along the line. The people waved as they passed the farms and cottages, and he gave a loud whistle at the school. The children all ran to see him puffing by. Agnes, Ruth, Jemima, Lucy, and Beatrice enjoyed themselves too. "He's cocky, truck, truck, but he's nice, truck, truck. He's cocky, truck, truck, but he's nice, truck, truck," they sang as they trundled along. They were growing very fond of Peter Sam. Every afternoon they had to wait an hour by the station at the lake. The station has a little shop selling refreshments. The driver, fireman, and conductor buy tea and cakes from the refreshment lady. Then they go and sit in Beatrice. The refreshment lady always comes home on this train. Time passed slowly on this day for Peter Sam. At last, the waiting was over, and the driver and fireman came back to Peter Sam. "Beep, beep," he whistled to the passengers. "Hurry up, please." And they came strolling back to the station. "How awful," thought Peter Sam, who was sizzling with impatience, "if we miss Henry's train." The last few passengers arrived. The conductor was ready with his flag and whistle, and the refreshment lady walked across the platform, making her way to the train. Then it happened. The conductor says that Peter Sam was too impatient, but Peter Sam was sure that he heard a whistle. Anyway, he started. Come along, he puffed. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" wailed the coaches. "You've left the refreshment lady behind." The conductor whistled and waved his red flag. The driver, looking back, saw the refreshment lady shouting and running after the train. "Bother!" groaned Peter Sam as he came to a stop. "They're sure to miss Henry now." The refreshment lady climbed into Beatrice, and they started again. "Oh, they're sure to be late! Oh, they're sure to be late!" panted Peter Sam frantically. His driver had to keep checking him. "Steady, old boy, steady!" "Beep, beep!" whistled Peter Sam at the stations. "Hurry, please, hurry!" And they reached the big station just as Henry steamed in. "Hurrah!" said Peter Sam. "We've caught him after all!" And he let off steam with relief. "Not bad, youngster," said Henry loftily. But the refreshment lady was still cross. She shook her fist at Peter Sam. "What do you mean by leaving me behind?" she demanded. "I'm sorry, refreshment lady," said Peter Sam, "but Henry said that he would leave without us. I was worried about our passengers." The refreshment lady laughed. "You silly engine! Engine was a teasing you. He would never dare go without our passengers. He has to wait. It's a guaranteed connection." "Well," said Peter Sam, "where is that Henry?" But Peter Sam was too late that time, for Henry had chortled away. Old Faithful. Sir Handel stayed shut up for several days. But one market day, Peter Sam couldn't work. He needed repairs. Sir Handel was glad to come out. He tried to be kind to the coaches, but they didn't trust him. They were very awkward and rude. He even tried singing little songs, but it was no use. It was most unfortunate, too, that Sir Handel had to check suddenly to avoid running over a sheep. "He's bumped us!" screamed the coaches. "Let's pay him out!" The coaches knew that all engines must go carefully at a place near the big station. But they were so cross with Sir Handel that they didn't care what they did. They surged into him, and he lurched off the line. Luckily, no one was hurt. Sir Handel limped back to the shed. Mr. Percival inspected the damage. "No more work for you today," he said grimly. "Bother those coaches. We must take the village people home and fetch the tourists, all without an engine." "What about me, Mr. Percival, sir?" said a voice. "Skarloey!" he exclaimed. "Can you do it?" "I'll try," answered the old engine. The coaches stood at the platform. Skarloey advanced on them, hissing crossly. "I'm ashamed of you ladies," he scolded Agnes, Ruth, Jemima, Lucy, and Beatrice. "Such behavior! You might have hurt your passengers, on market day, too." "We're sorry, Skarloey," stammered the coaches. "We didn't think. It's that Sir Handel. He's—" "No tales," said Skarloey firmly. "I won't have it, and don't dare try any tricks on me." No, Skarloey, of course not, Skarloey," quavered the coaches meekly. Skarloey might be old and have dirty red paint, but he was most definitely an engine who would stand no nonsense. His friends gathered around, and the conductor had to shoo them away before he could start. Skarloey felt happier as he started on his journey. He remembered all the gates and stiles where he had to stop and whistle to his friends. The sun shone, and the rails were dry. "This is lovely," he thought. But presently they began to climb, and he felt short of steam. Oh, bother my tubes," he panted. "Take your time, old boy," soothed his driver. I'll manage," he wheezed, and pausing for breath at the stations, he gallantly struggled on. After a rest at the top station, Skarloey was ready to start. It'll be better downhill, he thought. The coaches ran nicely, but he soon began to feel tired again. His springs were weak, and the rail joints jarred his wheels. Then, with a sudden crack, a front spring broke, and he stopped. "I feel all crooked," he complained. "That's done it," said his driver. "We'll need a bus now for our passengers." "No," pleaded Skarloey. "I'd be ashamed to have a bus take my passengers. I will get them home or burst," he promised bravely. At the big station, Mr. Percival paced the platform and looked at his watch. James and his train waited impatiently too. Then they heard a hoarse peep, peep. Then groaning, clanging, and clanking, Skarloey crept into sight. He was tilted to one side and making fearful noises, but he plodded bravely on. "I'll do it! I'll do it!" he gasped between the clanks and groans. "I'll do it! I'll do it! Oh, I've done it!" And he sighed thankfully as the train stopped where James was waiting. James said nothing to Skarloey. He waited for his passengers and respectfully puffed away. "You are right, sir," said Skarloey to the owner that evening. "Old engines can't pull trains like young ones." The owner smiled. "They can if they're mended, Old Faithful," he said, "and that's what will happen to you. You deserve it." "Oh, sir," said Skarloey happily. Sir Handel is longing for Skarloey to come back. He thinks that Skarloey is the best engine in the world. He does his fair share of the work now, and Agnes, Ruth, Jemima, Lucy, and Beatrice never play tricks on him, because he always manages them in Skarloey's way.